Welcome to this new course, Task 3A, Sequence Integrated Performance. So in this one, we're going to use the stimuli of Brick England by the Pet Shop Boys. I think this is a really good brief to do, and I think you're going to really enjoy getting all these parts down. Now, throughout this course, we will look at the specification and just make sure we're meeting all of those requirements. We are going to produce a score for this, which should be ready October 1st, 2017. And we'll be working through all the different parts for this song to try and help you recreate it. Now, just a note that this is just for reference, as is the score. You have to do the listening for this. Now, the score, as per all scores, there will be mistakes. There will be room for maneuver. It won't be perfect. So just use the score as your reference and then build upon that, okay? And the same for this course. This is just my interpretation of what I would do for Brick England. You may think differently, and that's absolutely fine. You need to take your own approaches. When you're listening to these parts, you will hear things that I necessarily haven't heard, or you may hear things that maybe mine are slightly wrong or whatever. You need to follow your own approach. You need to make sure that it is all your work and that you have done it the way that you want to do it. That being said, you will pick up lots and lots of really good advice and really good tips throughout this course. So just to go over a couple other things then, so make sure firstly that you have the correct Brick England track. Now this is from the CD at the top here, which is Electronica 2, Heart of Noise. Okay, so just make sure you've got that. You can find that on iTunes. You will need to record at least a main vocal. For this particular sequence, I'll probably be recording the lead vocal and backing track. All other parts will probably be sequence unless I hear something that could be done as live audio. You are allowed up to 3 live audio tracks, so keep that in mind. You're not allowed any more than that. You have to be in sole charge of everything that you do for this track. This has to be your work, okay? So you can use this course just to help inform decisions, but ultimately it has to be your work. And then finally, you need to mix it down and bounce it down as track 1 of your portfolio to CD. Make sure you bounce it down 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz, okay, and predominantly as a WAV or AIFF uncompressed file. Okay, so let's get started. Let's have a look at this first track. So in this session, we're just going to look at setting up. So there's a few things that you need to know as you go through. So the first thing is probably the key. Do you know what key you're working in? Now, for my money, and you may see different, but I've got it down as F minor. If you decide it's not F minor, please have a listen through that and make sure you do get the correct key. For the tempo for this track, I've got it down as 112. So 112 just seems to fit really nice. And you will need to work out the tempo early on because we're going to put this track in place. And then finally, you need a time signature of 4/4. So this is your basic setup. You will need to listen through this track and make sure everything synchronizes properly, okay? So the first thing I've done here is I've got the Brick England track and I've put it into my actual sequencer. Now, I bought this from iTunes, and for those that are used to using Logic, this will become as no shock to you that you can actually get your iTunes library here. It doesn't work with Apple Music. It does have to be purchased through iTunes. And if you scroll down, you should see Brick England here somewhere. There it is. So from there, you just drag it onto your sequencer, nice and easy. So if you buy it through iTunes, everything in Logic Pro is very simple. Now, I should have said at the beginning also is that this will be done in Logic Pro X predominantly, okay? A lot of these skills will be transferable, but mostly it's just for Logic X. Now, once you've got your track in, you do need to get it into the correct position. And I always tend to lock my files up so that later on down the line, I don't end up moving this track. How you can lock in Logic Pro is if you right click and then come down to where it says configure track header, you can actually get the lock button here somewhere. So you can turn this lock button on and then this lock key comes up. And if you lock it in place after you've put it in the correct position, you'll be absolutely fine. So if I just zoom in, I'll just show you where I've got it stuck on. So the first thing I had to do is pull this little arrow back, because if you don't, you're going to end up having to move your track onto bar 2, and then it won't match up to the actual song, and it won't match up to the score or any other notes that you might find it. And it can get quite confusing quite quickly. So all I've done is just, there's a little arrow here, and you can just move it around as much as you want, so you get a pre-count if you like. So then you can move this audio track in. Now this was fairly simple to kind of put into the sequence and lock into place. If you can see, beat 1 is right there. You can see the peak, and if I make this a bit bigger, you can actually see, and I'm probably slightly off here, but if we move up a little bit further, you should be able to see why I've done it that way. And once again, if you don't agree with any of these decisions, you think, actually, I'm going to put it somewhere else, that's absolutely fine. These are just tips to kind of help you through it. Yeah, see, my beat 1's actually here, so in many respects, I'm probably ever so slightly off. So if I unlock this and just move it back ever so slightly, and it is really important that you get this perfectly, because if you don't, you won't be in line with the grid. Now, being in line with the grid is going to be so important, because you're going to be able to hear things and then put them onto the grid positions as you need them. So this is going to help you a lot later on. So once you've done that, just lock that up again. So we've got that in position, and let's just make sure that is right now. It's still a bit before, but I can live with that. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is work out your sections. So I've already gone through it. I'll give you mine, but you may decide that you want to call them something different, and that's absolutely fine. So using this marker track, I've just come through and I've just pressed the plus button. I've moved my playhead along. I've pressed the plus button, double clicked on the header, and it gives me my track markers. So the first thing I've got is a pre 2 bars. Then I've got an intro of 8 bars. Then at bar 11, I've got a verse 1 of 16 bars. And notice I've colorized them as well. If you want to color them and this panel isn't open, you can also do this, and you can press the color palette and you can colorize them whatever you want. It doesn't have to be these horrible colors that I've used. So once you've done that, I've then got at bar 27, I've got a chorus of 16 bars. Keep going through, and then at bar 43, I've called the next section a break, and that's just 4 bars, followed by some kind of middle 8 at bar 47. And then at 55, I've got verse 2, which is 16 bars again. And you're going to start seeing a few repeated sections. And the good thing about this track is there is a lot of stuff that you can copy and paste, which is great. So keep moving forward. So bar 71, chorus 2, 16 bars again. And these are really good notes. And if you notice, I've actually kind of put all the labels in as well. So actually this is going to be 16 bars. And this kind of helps me just keep track of it also. Then we've got another break. And I have colorized all the sections the same, as you can see here. Then we've got chorus 3, which is the second part of the chorus. And that lasts for 8 bars. And then finally we have this outro that is 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. It's about 9 bars by the looks of it. Okay, and that's the whole track. So if I just squeeze it back in, and then I've just put my end marker in as well. And once again, if you're happy with that, you can then press the lock button, and that's all done. One thing I would say to you guys to watch out as you go through is your snapping positions. The first position it gives you is smart, and you do have to make sure you snap it to the grid. If you put it ever so slightly off, it snaps it to that position. It can be off. And that's the same as you go through the parts as well. Just make sure that your containers are on the grid, otherwise it can be a bit funny. Now, this is my track. So the next thing that I would do if I was you guys is turn on your metronome, which is this one here. We've already set it up to 112, which is great. We've already got time signature 4/4, and we've got our F minor key. So we're all set up, we're all ready to go. We've got the track in the right position, and we've locked it. Now your mission is just to listen through the track and make sure all of the beats are in time. So zoom back out, and we'll go back to the beginning. I'll just play a couple of bars, just so you can hear that it's all in time. So when we create my next track, it will all be there. So here we go. And there you go. So that is perfectly in time, perfectly good. The next thing I would do as part of my setup, if I were you guys, is just to blanket out some tracks. So by going up to here and pressing this little plus button, we can add some tracks. So say for instance, you want 8 new tracks. You can just come here, and these will just create dummy containers, if you like, or dummy tracks. Press the software instrument, 8 tracks, and then press create. Now, what you can do from here is you've got all of these new tracks, and you can just label them up. So okay, vocal, or if you like, main vocal. And we know we're going to have some kind of backing track as well. So we just have BVs there. We know we're going to have some kind of synth one, and so on. So if you blanket out all these tracks, you're kind of working towards what you need. And it all comes back to listening through the tracks, seeing what you need, okay? That's pretty much it for the setup. I hope that was useful. In the next video, we're going to look at the drum track. So we're going to start putting in the drum tracks. Once again, this will just be a dummy guide at this point. It's really so we've got something to work to. So we're not using this dreadful metronome all the way through. So we've actually got something to work through. So in the next video, we'll explain about that. Get your track set up first, make sure you are happy. Then finally, just make sure you go File, Save, and you know where you've saved this track, okay? Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.